brilliance is the fact that it depicts plausible technologies in nearby planets within our own solar system. I mean, here we see a giant dirigible floating over the surface of Mars. We see a space station floating over those magnificent cryogeysers in the moon of Enceladus around Saturn. Some bold and intrepid explorers take to the skies and soar using wingsuits in the atmosphere of Titan, the moon of Saturn. And thrill-seeking base jumpers jump off the largest cliffs in our solar system around the icy moon of Miranda, near Uranus. And even better, we get to hear Carl Sagan's dulcet tones waxing lyrical about Moby Dick and our species' insatiable itch for things remote, our longing to sail forbidden seas. It's breathtaking. And this is just one of many instances where cutting-edge CGI and graphics technology has enabled us to depict plausible worlds. Interstellar is one of the leading examples of this, as is the series The Expanse, and obviously Star Trek, and many others besides. Now, these depictions of other worlds have something in common. They elicit within me a sense of unimaginable awe, the type of awe that Jennifer was speaking about last night. The universe is beautiful. But they also bring back within me an experience that I had as a young aerospace engineer, which kind of shocked me to the core. What you see here is an ad that I read in Aviation Week, trade publication, and it was a full-page ad on the back cover. In 200 years, space travel will be routine. You, however, will be dead. Now, I have no idea to this day what this thing was that they were advertising. I think it was some kind of insurance, I don't know, because I was too busy picking myself off the floor from the existential crisis that it induced. This was a really big deal for me, because it threatened to take the gloss off every single wonderful experience that I had. Every time Elon Musk lands 2 SpaceX boosters and recovers them, every time the exoplanets are discovered by the Kepler, every time I look at those magnificent ultra-deep fields from the Hubble, my enthusiasm is tempered by the sober realisation that by the time the good stuff, the really good stuff, comes to fruition, I will be dead. And everyone in this room will be dead as well. And the chances of us actually standing on these other worlds are effectively zero within this life. I will caveat that. I think Jonathan Clark probably has a 5% chance of standing on Mars, but the rest of us, zero. Now, this is a problem, I think, for various worldviews. It's a problem for the naturalist who believes in no non-natural causes. I think it's a challenge, perhaps, for the theist. These are the 2 main competing worldviews that are at play in our culture. And I think that this depiction of humanity's near and far future opens up some amazing opportunities for dialogue. One of the starting points, I think, is beauty as an entry point to discussion. So I think we all agree, whatever your worldview, that the universe is beautiful. And I think we can open our discussions with naturalists and people of other faiths by acknowledging we all share in the awe and appreciation of the beauty of our universe. Astronaut Chris Hadfield talked about this when he did his first EVA, or spacewalk. He said that intellectually he was prepared to step outside the space station, but when he actually did it, he felt like he was being smacked in the face by raw beauty. It had a profound effect on him. Other astronauts call this the overview effect, feeling of transcendence and being in the presence of something unimaginably powerful. And I think Hadfield actually used the example of, it's like coming face to face with a tiger, looking up and seeing it right there in front of you. So this unimaginable beauty. So let's acknowledge that. Let's use this as a starting point for a mature discussion. And I'll just make the point that here, as I compare various worldviews, I don't want to pay out on naturalism in any way. Personally, I actually think naturalism is a coherent worldview in its own right. It has some explanatory power in quite a lot of areas. What I want to do is to have a mature discussion where theists and naturalists don't feel the need to throw memes at each other written by comedians. I think we can be better than that. I think this discussion needs to be not like barracking for sides in a football game, but instead just being intellectually and emotionally honest about where we are. That Wanderer's video has a top comment on YouTube by the aptly named Lost in the Cosmos YouTube user. This film fills me with both unbounding joy and sadness. Joy at what the future holds for mankind, but a deep, lonely sadness that I will not live to witness it. Another user says, it hits me at my core and hurts, knowing that I was born too early to stand on the edge and look over another planet like at the end show. That smile and wide eyes of wonder fill me with desire that I can never fulfill. I think this poignant cartoon illustrates what's going on. Now, I was young enough to remember seeing Halley's Comet, all going well. I'll see it again. I'm planning on living to 120, as I tell my kids, but we'll see. But beyond that, what is there? What is there for the naturalist to look forward to, and what is there for the theist to look forward to? Ursula Goodenough, the biologist, told a very moving story of when she was going camping in her 20s and suddenly realising the bleak emptiness of the night sky. She said that it was ruined when she finally realised and accepted what was actually going on in the cosmos or deep inside the atom. She wept into her pillow and did her best not to think about such things. Now, in the end, she actually embraced a kind of religious naturalism, embracing the idea of mystery and not looking for meaning in the cosmos, and was able to cope that way. I personally don't feel psychologically equipped to do that, but people cope in different ways. What I think we need to do is to look at beauty and see if our worldview is a prism that amplifies that beauty and helps the light shine forth, or is it a prism that actually dulls the beauty and makes it inherently melancholy? Is the fact that we yearn so desperately for other worlds, other experiences, is this a byproduct of happy coincidence of causes by a universe that coughed us up with no meaning or no purpose in mind? Or are these things clues? Maybe they're hints that need to be followed. Maybe they're pointers in a certain direction. So what are the alternatives? I think one of them with naturalism is don't think about such things. A lot of people tend to take that option. I think for the scientifically inclined, not thinking about such things is a difficult ask. One option is to have a stoic approach, an austere, kind of detached understanding that yes, this will happen, but maybe I can at least give to my children a better world. And that's a valid response, but I think it places a lot of demands on the individual. Another option is to fight hard for immortality, but immortality on our terms, and I'll talk about that in a minute. With theism, the typical critic of religion will say it's just hope for pie in the sky when you die. I have a bit more to say about that as well later. Maybe we're just meant to escape the world. Maybe God's going to just burn the world and the material cosmos and we can all float off to heaven. Maybe there's another option. So let's suppose we did want to, within a naturalistic view, extend our own lives to the point where we could reach for the stars. Now, a couple of very interesting sci-fi series have dealt with this question. One of them was Altered Carbon. And in this show, this extended quote, I think, is quite telling. I wanted to be an explorer, see other worlds with my own eyes, but one life wasn't enough time to see the stars. So I found a way to transfer the human consciousness between bodies and in that creation soar. Sounds beautiful. Suddenly, anyone could travel distances beyond imagination faster than light, and no one would ever be limited by one lifetime again. I thought I was freeing the human spirit, but I was building the roads for Rome. Eternal life for those who can afford it means eternal control over those who can't. And in this series, a major plot thread is the emergence of these myths after the biblical character Methuselah, who have such long lives and unimaginable control over resources, and they don't always use it for good. Very similar plotline in The Expanse, except this time it's an extrasolar molecule called the proto-molecule, which comes out and can be used to massively enhance humanity. One scientist describes it as the ticket out of the limitations that bind us to these pathetic little bubbles of rock and air. If we master it, we can apply it to everything. We can become our own gods. Needless to say, this doesn't work out very well. But it's easy to see his argument. Imagine human beings being able to live in a hard vacuum without a suit or under the crushing atmosphere of a gas giant, or being able to hibernate long enough to travel to the stars. What's interesting here is that these prophetic warnings against reaching for the stars are not coming so much from religious people, but from the prophetic element of the science fiction community. I think that's very interesting. So I'm going to talk now about the idea of looking at things with different theoretical spectacles. We've heard of this kind of bleak, nihilistic view, but I think Alistair McGrath nails it when he said, as he transferred from atheism to theism, he realised that this meaninglessness was simply a way of looking at things and not a factual account of things. He was impressing meaningless onto the cosmos. It's what you saw when you looked at the world with one unacknowledged set of theoretical spectacles. But what would happen if we put on a different pair of spectacles? What if the world was seen through a God lens, through a theistic schema? I came to discover that the night sky looked rather different when seen from the standpoint of faith. So what is it that people criticise about the Christian worldview, particularly from a scientific view? I think it's this idea of floating off to a disembodied heaven to which they have no empirical access whatsoever. It's difficult to understand, but I think no theologian has been more active in urging us to reform this view than N.T. Wright. He gives an extended analysis of this in his book, The Day the Revolution Began. I'm going to break down this quote. I don't really like these theological terms, by the way. Wright says we've Platonised our eschatology. What he means there is just substituting souls going to heaven for the promised new creation. It was Plato who believed in the disembodied soul that would float off and then you could discard this earthly shell. We've therefore moralised our anthropology, which I think is substituting a qualifying examination of moral performance for the biblical notion of the human vocation. And as a result, we've paganised our soteriology, which means adopting essentially a pagan view of what it means to be saved. Now, Wright says the idea of God killing Jesus to satisfy his wrath at the expense of a richer, more holistic set of biblical notions is an impoverished view of salvation. It's only one aspect of the prism. What Wright suggests is what I think is a viable spacefaring theology, an authentically biblical view of a restored and redeemed cosmos, a call to a vocation that enables us to cooperate with God to bring this new world into being, and critically, the promise of a destiny whereby we will get to explore and delight in this new world in a fully embodied manner. Now, how this might actually happen, of course, remains speculative. I think Andrew Wood said yesterday had some very good ideas about how we might have continuity with the next life. And I honestly don't know how that's going to unfold. Maybe it's God breathing new information into this creation to enable us to be re-embodied into it. Maybe our emergence into the resurrection body will happen some other way. Maybe we'll gain a better understanding of the past and be able to re-embody the best versions of ourselves. I'm open to a whole bunch of options here, much of it's speculative. The key is the idea of God doesn't want to destroy this wonderful universe that He's fine-tuned for life. He wants us to explore and enjoy it. Now, I think this actually forms a viable apologetic, what I call a soft apologetic. It's not about forcing some logical propositions on someone, expecting them to believe them, and then, hey presto, you're a follower of Jesus. I think it's actually a blend of the aesthetic and the functional. It's like a cathedral. This apologetic is like a structure that is functional. Okay, you need the structure to hold up. But the reason you go inside the building is because you're drawn inside by its beauty. The aesthetics is its beating heart. So again, our apologetic is really to say this is a beautiful worldview that we have. It's a view that has a positive, optimistic view of the cosmos, and that we don't have to reach out with these kind of grasping at immortality by our own devices, because we're meant to follow these clues to meaning and to something truly greater. Now, this is all well and good. Aesthetic appeals, as Peter Lighthart said, they make for wonderful poetry, but can they be employed in practical apologetics? Will it make any impact on that elusive creature? You know, this person in the street, if they so exist, does it actually make an impact? One response is to say that well, this in itself is a reduction, cramped conception of what's practical, and it already concedes to a questionable functionalism. Refusing to question the man in the street about beauty simply confirms his preference for useful but ugly streets. And this is critical. But if, as Augustine seemed to believe, man is created so as to respond to the beauty of God and his creation, then an apologetic that highlights the beauty that beckons us is perfectly practical. Just move on there. I think I'd like to leave us all with a proposal that we give this person on the street their due credit. She sees clearly enough to appreciate the beauty of the universe for what it is. So let us honour this by articulating and promoting a worldview worthy of such an insight. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Provocative, very interesting, and it would be great to take about 45 minutes for questions now. But unfortunately we can't, we only have 15 seconds.
One question.
Which means I'll take one question. Caught them by surprise, didn't I?
No one wants to be the selfish
I'm waiting for
person
that
taking
first
the question.
hand. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Thanks for that. I think it's got my brain going. I've got about 3 or 4 questions. The one that seems to come up, and something that Stanislaw Lem, a science fiction writer, wrote many years ago, he lamented the fact that the prophetic voice of science fiction had never reached anything like a minor fraction of its potential. And some of it, I think, listening to some of the conversations, some of the discussion over the last couple of days, what are your thoughts about one of the things that we deal with is moral naivety, that people actually don't have the tools to actually engage on some of the philosophical and deep moral questions. It's all done at a very simplistic level.
This is actually one of the points raised in Interstellar. If you remember the movie, spoiler alert, that one of the characters says that we're not equipped to make these decisions that involve the continuity of our species and moving beyond Earth. I'd probably push back on that and say that with proper reflection, we actually do have the cognitive apparatus to do that properly. We just need to think very carefully about what it means to think beyond ourselves and for the good of the collective rather than the good of the individual.
Thank you, James. Will you thank James again?